forward. Starting from humble beginnings and beginnings on a farm in Princeton, Minnesota, working and learning has been instilled in me ever since I was old enough to literally carry physical objects. My father, who was a farmer, a high school agriculture teacher, and a Minnesota State District Senator, would make sure that I made myself helpful and contribute around the farm. So it is safe to say that my father was insanely driven and that I took that torch and ran with it. As I was surrounded by so much education and perhaps needed to rebel a bit as a child of a public figure under the microscopic small town lens of judgment at times, I was not even sure I wanted to go to college out of high school. It was more important to me at the time to go to school to gain skills and to get a job in a field of interest. That field was graphic design. The school that I attended was known as the School of Communication Arts in Minneapolis. There I learned visual design concepts and layout using programs like Photoshop, Illustrator, PageMaker, and Quark Express. We also learned how to prep a file for print, known as the pre-press process. So once I had hit the big time, looking back, which is interesting, and secured a job as an advertising designer for the Scotsman-Isanti County newspaper in Cambridge, Minnesota, really big, famous, big time here, I was not quite ready to be working with folks with gray hair and to wear a tie and to wear a tie to work every day. So now that I had essentially proved that I can get a professional job, I was now ready, as nobody else was telling me to do so either. On my own terms, I started attending community college at Anoka Ramsey Community College, Cambridge campus, also known as AR. I lived at home with my dad at that time. I worked full-time at a truck part manufacturing company called Lund Industries in Anoka. Each day I would drive to Cambridge, take classes in the morning and early afternoon, then drive back the backcountry roads to Anoka, work 3 to 11 p.m., drive home to Princeton, then study until around 3 a.m. in the morning. So it was school, work, sleep, repeat. AR, called the Cambridge Anoka Ramsey, also known as AR, and at this location was called the Cambridge Community College at the time, before rebranding, was barely a college at the time and was technically a college center of Anoka Ramsey. There I earned my 2-year degree, essentially in 2 avocado green pole barn buildings that looked like they were stuck in the 70s and could easily been on a farm. There we created our own student life at Cambridge Community College, I still like to call it. We turned the old library, for example, we turned the old library at the far end of the second pole barn humanities building into a weight room, as they were building a real college campus across the street on the bluffs of the river and moving the library there. So we repurposed and had some latitude there too, since it was so small and there wasn't much going on in terms of student life. The students really could have more say in things like what would happen to rooms after you changed the purpose of that room. I also worked as a TA in the library, so I could work out and also do my homework there, which was great. I think it was a lofty $6 an hour pay at the time. All right, so one other example of forming or creating our own student experience was that we brought equipment from home and dug our own volleyball court so we could have that activity outside of where the weight room was in the old library. We also put on things like a talent show. We had a school dance, none of which had been done in years. Extracurriculars, I was a part of Student Senate. I was the Student Senate president. We affectionately called our college Pole Barn University too. So when we answer the phone, we'd say, Pole Barn University, how may I help you? I was in choir and music competitions. I was also in a play called Lysistrata. My favorite professor there was Wendy Zins. She was a health and nutrition instructor there. She was kind of a younger instructor, and she was the first person that ever taught me about being mindful and using that as a stress reduction technique. So very influential. Best memory was being a part of this Minnesota State College Student Association and going to what were known as Council of Presidents events, where we would go to different college campuses and talk about different advocacy efforts and issues that students were facing. And my favorite trip was going to International Falls and going to a community college there during Icebox days. There was this, there's 20 or 30 below, and they had this big festival celebrating that it was literally the coldest place in the nation. And I was proud to be there in doing that. We also snuck across the border and went to a bar in Canada, which was the first time I left the country, so it was a big deal. One of the other best memories was a school dance in the new building commons. So while we were getting a new building, we were also doing something that hadn't been done there in a really long time, so it was special that way. Once I graduated from Anoka Ramsey Cambridge campus, I transferred to Winona State University as a junior once I had the 2-year block under my belt. My grades were not so hot at the time, so when I transferred, I was on academic probation. I remember being shocked by how unprepared I was in my writing. I'd never seen so much red ink in my life. Now my saving grace, feedback is your friend, and I tell that to my students that I teach now, which is a great 360 gone full circle, of course. Once I started taking communication and public relations courses at Winona State, I became much more interested and motivated in school. That's really where my obsession began, and my degree collection kind of began. My degree in organizational communication also set the groundwork for both working in and teaching strategic communication topics. So Winona State is nested in the bluffs in the southeast corner of the state, and it hosts a lake, it's near a river, and the famous Sugarloaf Rock Formation. In fact, they have a very famous forensics tournament. Well, I thought it was famous. Within the forensics community, everybody knows the Sugarloaf competition. I was also in forensics at Winona State. So overall, Winona is a beautiful and comfortable small town, a great place to grow and learn. So as I mentioned, extracurriculars, I was in forensics and competed. I was in choir and also in a club called SHRM, which is a Society for Human Resource Management. One of the beautiful things of the organizational communication major is you're taking communication studies classes while also taking public relations and human resources classes. One of my favorite professors was Kelly Harold. I took him for organizational communication. I still keep in touch with him through alumni efforts, and that's pretty neat. Best memory is walking around Lake Winona. There was a Collective Soul concert at the time in 1998 or 99. And of course, the downtown bar experience as a student. Transferring from a community college too and getting to the 4-year college university was very exciting, as I hadn't really been a part of the whole full-blown college experience. So that was great. I also had a great garden level apartment. I paid $325 a month for it. And it was blocks away from campus, from the Winona State campus, and also close to downtown. That's a strip of bars, frankly. All right, Metropolitan State University. After working in public relations and marketing for a few years at Inver Hills Community College in the marketing department, I had attended a workshop on color theory at Metropolitan State University that my boss sent me to. And I found out about a cool program that really encompassed much of business communication called technical communication. I had never even heard of that major. So once again, I worked full-time and took night classes this time and flourished academically, and also really enjoyed learning from my professional peers. Extracurriculars at Metro State or research. Essentially, I did research in internet neutrality, and I was a TA for an educational technology class right after graduation. And one of my favorite professors was Craig Hansen. He was the chair of the department, and it had him for technical communication class itself. Best memory, again, was learning from professional students, the classes themselves, and of course, graduation. Okay, so after I started teaching, and I had also caught the teaching bug after starting teaching a student success class at Inver Hills Community College, I started teaching beginning composition at Metro State, and also teaching communication studies at Concordia University, St. Paul, as well as teaching English and communication studies at St. Mary's University. I shifted to working at Hennepin Technical College and also working there. And I was doing that for a few years. And once I started working more in the Minnesota state system, I learned about the tuition waiver, which is available, which changed my whole outlook on even more possibilities in terms of my education. So I was looking forward to potentially getting a second master's degree paid for completely by the state, which I'm finally reaching. For over a decade, I chipped away at many MSUM classes in communication studies, English, composition, and technical communication. So I've been taking classes for over a decade, so I had to appeal to the school to get some of my older credits to not be expired and count. After retaking a required but expired professional communication class and completing 7 forensics modules for 5 remaining makeup communication studies electives, I am now on track to graduate in fall 2022 after I complete my capstone paper. Hallelujah. Extracurriculars or things that I of note at Mankato, Minnesota State University Mankato. I have completed most of the forensic modules over those 10 years, and I'm proud of that. I've learned a lot inside of it, and it's a nice extension of my forensics involvement at Winona State, in fact. And it also builds my skills because I teach public speaking and I work in communication studies, of course. So favorite professor or class would be Kristen Trinan for gender communication, and also Kirsten Cole in composition. And I really enjoyed the workshop, kind of writing workshop classes. I've had a chance to grow as a writer too. Best memory, free tuition with the MSCF/IFO with the 4-year schools unions. MSCF is the 2-year college union, IFO is 4-year, of course, and the writing classes, and of course, coming graduation. All right, so I'm not done yet. I have also, in my educational unquenchable thirst for knowledge, I've been also chipping away at another graduate certificate in human sexuality at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, 100% online still at this point. This education is to support another goal of earning a 3rd master's degree in counseling, probably from Minnesota State Mankato or St. Cloud State University, also with that tuition waiver. Once earned, then I would like to use that graduate certificate in human sexuality as a therapy emphasis. My background in communication studies also will come in handy in that role. Some focus on research at the University of Wisconsin-Stout is going to be looking at intersectionality, assertive sexual communication, asking for what you want, and also guilt-free sex. Favorite professor or class would be Dr. Marky Twist, sex and gender diversity, and best memory so far would be an online presentation about geriatric sex behaviors that would shock you and also is extremely, makes me happy as a human being. Sexual attitudes assessments, SAR, is the first class that I have to take there, and it's been eye-opening to say the least. And there was an online presentation about devil worship as well, in terms of violating social norms, and that was an extreme violation that tied into sex therapy studies, which was fascinating. So after being a teacher's son, not sure about going to college coming out of high school, and with humble beginnings, it all started in those avocado, terrible looking green pole barn buildings, I have earned several degrees and have taught in multiple disciplines at many colleges and universities at undergraduate, graduate levels, and for public and private schools as well. I am being awarded a 2nd master's degree and 2 to 3 graduate certificates in the next year or so in between Mankato State and Stout, University of Minnesota Mankato and Stout, and still plan on earning a 3rd master's degree and maybe even obtaining the elusive doctorate degree in communication studies or technical communication someday. I will never stop working or learning, as it is just who I am.